Hey there, lovely people, and welcome to The Gamer's Rest. My name's Tal, and in this show, Tal Talks, I get to talk to interesting and creative people in the TTRP industry. Can't even say the introduction right. Today, it's a special day today because I'm lucky enough to be joined by my own GM, and she is going to be talking a lot today about some of the work she does, but also some of the work with regards to GMing for the younger generation as well. Today's guest is Highlandlass. Hello, how are you?
Hello, doing really well, thank you.
Good to hear. For those of you that haven't met you yet, where can they find you, and do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm found on Twitter, Blue Sky, and I do use Facebook. That's tend to be just friends and family, but I am there on one or two D&D groups. Obviously got my own, I run two blogs. One is the school library blog, I'll come to that in a minute, and the other is my own Adventures in Ravana blog as well, which I occasionally post to, which is basically D&D related. Yeah, I'm a school librarian. I've been running, we're coming into our 20th year of running D&D at the school that I work in the islands of Orkney, so a very remote location. I think we're getting 20 years of D&D. Started all with some pupils coming to me, can we play D&D in the library? I said, oh yeah, I played that once, and the rest is history, so to speak. So
I'm always curious. How did you get started with D&D? What was your first experience?
My first experience, I have vague memories of it, was 2 days before I moved to Orkney in 1992. So I'd finished university in 91, got the job, moved to Orkney. Well, 2 days before I moved to Orkney, I had a game in Aberdeen, hadn't a clue what I was doing. I remember sitting on a floor of a student accommodation, 5 or 6 people around us. The DM, who I didn't know DM a term at that time, don't remember character sheets. I remember rolling dice. I remember going home and dreaming about the game. I probably was a ranger, which is why I tend to like rangers and druids these days. I don't remember much else. I remember a forest in a cave. I also have a diary lurking somewhere that says, I really enjoyed it, must find a group when I moved to Orkney. Never happened. So that was my first encounter, and everything went over my head. I don't even think I had a character sheet. I think the DM just got us to roll dice and then narrated everything. So I can't even think what edition it was. And it wasn't until 2005, I think I've tracked it down to that according to my work diaries. Sometime in late 2004, early 2005 we started. These kids came to me at school. Can we play D&D? And I went, yep, can I join in? And they went, yep, and I joined in, and within weeks I was running. We started in 3rd edition, but very quickly 3.5 came out, and that was the one we went on with. And yeah, it kind of ballooned from there, and that was just a small group, and we did it on a Tuesday after school, and then I started running a Friday afternoon activity. And I'm proud to say that this activity, D&D, is timetabled technically on the curriculum. So it's not.
That's great.
So it's not even as though it is. Yeah, I've got the after school club, we've got the lunchtime stuff going on, but I have timetabled D&D every week. It's brilliant.
Nothing wrong with that.
And we're
great.
Still there. And we range, the highest we ever had was about 40 students, which is over 10% of the school roll.
Wow.
And we average around about 25. So on a Friday, and then I run with 6 or 7 on a Tuesday, more senior pupils, more experienced ones.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's so cool. I absolutely love it. So I want to start before we kind of go into the kind of library and school side of things. I just want to talk a little bit about you as a GM and your kind of writing, because I've got a chance to interrogate my GM, so I think this is the perfect opportunity.
You can talk about me if you want.
When you do come up with your adventures, how do you start out? What's your kind of process for designing what us poor mortal fools have to deal with?
I won't give away things because you know I'm very much an ad libber these days, based on what your characters do and what you maybe do as a player or how you react.
I feel mean asking the question because I know we do a lot of that, but I know there is a process there at the start where you go, "This is the plan."
The start for Jingle Hell was a Christmas one-shot.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that had been written for school. Lots of nice pretty decorations and snowmen and things like that around my DM screen and everything. As a kind of a fun thing with nasty snowmen, or sna-men as I call them, because sna-men is kind of an Orcadian term. I have to hasten to add I'm not Orcadian, I'm an incomer here. But yeah, and nasty spinning trees and exploding baubles, and it was actually based, that original one was loosely based on Matt Haig's A Boy Called Christmas.
Okay.
And I seriously recommend people to do it. Fantastic wee Christmas story. Matt Haig's a brilliant writer anyway. So that first Jingle Hell was based on that, and then I did a one shot after met you through the other game I played, didn't we? And then it kind of went on. Did the Christmas one shot 7 years later?
It's about that, isn't it? Yeah.
We kind of do, what is it? We're in kind of every 3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
So it turned from basically what came to mind was actually, no, you're stuck in something called the Winter Wild, which is a kind of like Feywild or Feyland, whatever you want to call it, and Shadowfell, so kind of another plane, but mine is Winter Wild. And the premise was just, let's stop Winter Wild. You would have gone to investigate the church, and the next thing you were zapped to this wintry land, and there is so much there that
there really is.
We could talk forever.
Oh
about.
God, yeah.
But a lot of my notes, I think a lot of ideas come from what my reading was. But a lot of what I do is inspired by where I grew up in the Highlands. Yes. Setting aside the winter stuff. You as a party, your party have stopped that in certain places, but maybe not all yet.
We're getting there. We're doing our best.
Slowly but surely. Still got a shadow dragon to deal with.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Anyway, aside, yeah, and I think a lot of time the story is there, but as players, and maybe I'm guilty of it as a DM, I keep throwing other stuff at you and you get sidetracked. You try and get choices, and then you sit and think, right, okay, I'm going to have to make something else for that, but it has to be connected to the adventure. Yeah. If I'm writing something like for the Orkney setting that I occasionally do stuff for, it's really based on Orkney folklore.
Yeah.
I mean, well and truly. The other game that I run, where Seldom is a Place Not Often Seen, actually started out as one I ran for, if I get the document, it's not there, I think I created it for 4th edition for the school. And that premise was the party was starting to have dreams. And I think that was my first 4E adventure after we switched from 3.5. So we'd done something in 3.5 in Tarlant and castles and things like that being taken. Did this 4.5 one about the characters having dreams and having to kind of work out what the heck was going on, and then heading towards this castle that's not always in the same place. And that's evolved into kind of something much more. Both games are so interlinked. And as you know, there is a lich involved. Somebody, or at least a group of people trying to rise a supposedly long dead lich.
Unfortunately, yes, I'm very aware of that.
Yeah. Some 1542 years or so after the upheaval, basically. Yeah. And then again, I'm quite into all the kind of the scenery and the landscape. I grew up in the Highlands, and that is what my first world that I created was based on. So the original Tarland was just a map, and then I added on the east coast of the north of Scotland where I was in, and then the west coast, and then the north bit, or Benorthing as I called it, which is kind of unexplored, where all the nasty shadowy armies are coming from at the moment. And I think a lot of the creative process is actually creating the maps. Whether you're back then I was hand drawing a lot, and now when I'm creating maps in Dungeon Alchemist, I'm still hand drawing actually from time to time. I'm getting ideas as I do that.
Yeah.
And the ideas are just bullet noted. And if they link to what the characters are doing, all well and good. If not, they just sit in a bullet point and notebook forever.
The one thing.
It's a very organic process I do.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I've always found in our games, I find it a very collaborative process in how kind of things work, in the way our characters react. The way you DM is that it all feeds back into the story, and so it does. Trust me, it does. And I think that's really interesting because having played in lots of different games, it doesn't always happen, and the kind of, the way the characters react, and I think it takes a certain skill to weave what the characters are doing and make the story almost react to them. And that's definitely the vibe I get from our games.
It's part of that being invested at school. In my school groups, I have 55 minutes for my timetabled activity. 1 hour and 10, 1 hour and 15 if I'm lucky for the after school activity, and 30 minutes at lunchtime. Well, I don't do it because the pupils do that now. So you don't get that full role playing thing, and I would never have thought of myself as a role player. And I certainly give me a real life scenario in a training day, and I would be out the door if I was allowed to be. I can't do it. Nothing like that. So kind of role playing in a behaviour management training. Nope, not a chance. Can't do that. I go all flustered in front of people. But for some reason, Dungeons and Dragons or any other game, I have played other systems in the past, not DM'd. I have played in them. It's a different thing, and I think it feels a safer space, especially when you find a really good group like you folks.
Oh, bless you!
I am actually really honoured to play with the folks that I play with in that 2 games.
Well, we're lucky to have you as our GM, so it works both ways. It really does. So organic is the way. Yeah. But I can't do modules. I keep telling the kids at school, but for those that don't know, have come across me, they are teenagers, and I keep saying to them, I'm sorry, I run modules because I really honestly don't have the time to prep. I'm trying to reduce prep time to like bullet notes when I get ideas when I'm working or whatever. And I don't have time to prep, so I'm running modules, and I'm running Curse of Strahd for the older group on a Tuesday. But again, we don't have time to sit with the role play side of things. But I actually find it really difficult. And I also find it really difficult. There is something in my brain that something straight and sit on paper. Well, that's it on paper. I know you can do what you want with it, but I struggle to do what I want with a module. It's really difficult, but I do take ideas from them sometimes. but even then, I don't like doing that. I like to have my own ideas or get the ideas from you. but that's it, isn't it? I think you tend to find that people that do DM, some people are really comfortable with that very structured, on the rails kind of adventure, and stick to the rules, and it's very specific. And some people like the more organic way of if you like, building the adventure around people and having like a framework, if you like, and then you fill in the picture with what people are kind of doing as an RP.
Well, certainly with our games, I know what the end in theory ought to be, if you ever get there.
In theory.
But if you do something in the game, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, okay, I can go away, create a map, create a scenario, without necessarily writing down, going back to the bullet points, and just letting that play out as it is, sort of thing. For instance, obviously last week, 3 weeks ago nearly, with Jingle Hell, and it's still called Jingle Hell, even though we're kind of out of the Winter Wild-ish, maybe. Note the maybe. I tease. That's the other thing. I mean, Tal will say I do tease quite a lot.
Yes.
But yeah, it's going away and creating something, whether it's I'm trying to do a pantheon, but I just get so sidetracked when you're searching stuff, because I mean, my games have what I call the old religions, mainly Celtic origin, sort of thing. But trying to create something like that, then you get distracted because you find something else and, oh, that'll be really good, and then you get distracted again, and that's just the way my brain works. And I think it's quite nice just to be guided by people and then see what happens.
What do you find is the most challenging part of that kind of creation process? What are the bits where you go, do you know what, actually that's where I have to really sit down and focus?
I think the challenging part is just sitting down and focusing.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I think it's just the way my brain works these days. I don't think tech has done my brain, and gaming, video gaming has done my brain any good whatsoever. But I think it's that sitting down and focusing. When I get a gen on something, I will go at it. But I get so caught in the details. So, for instance, settlement building. Again, both in Jingle Hell and Seldom, there's settlements where you're starting to find more settlements after being very remote and in the wild. And it's trying to create the settlements and having a background to those settlements. And then, so I start thinking, right, I need to write this up. And then I start creating a settlement template from and reading up on geographical how a settlement is. So I get sidetracked onto looking at something else. So yeah, give me geographical things and where settlements are placed by rivers and flat areas and water sources and places for farming.
It's all the technical details.
So I get caught up in that when I probably ought to be sitting and thinking what you're doing in the game.
But I think that's definitely part of it. I think you're very detailed persons when you're bringing the worlds alive. You can see that in the way we play, and obviously there's a lot of attention gone into that. Definitely.
I think, as I say, a lot's in my head. I wish I could plug in a USB and a hard drive just to download the thoughts that I have. Whether that's when I'm doing, I'm a horsey person as well. And Tal knows I meta horses because there's just some crazy things with D&D and horses. Anyway, when I'm out doing the horse chores, things are thinking, and then I'll have a great idea, and I'll get in by then. I am of a certain age. I'll get in, and I've completely forgotten it. And you just kind of wish when those long thinking thought processes come in, you wish you could just download it straight.
Yep. No, I agree. It'd be so much easier.
Yeah.
It'd make my life easier, definitely.
Yeah, I always carry a notebook with me when I'm out and about, when I'm away south or whatever, and the amount of photographs that I have of things that I have taken when, oh, that'll be good in D&D, oh, that'll be really good in a game.
Yep.
Some of which have actually been used. My parents, even now, I think they kind of were a bit uncertain of this obsession, because that's what it is. They, even now, oh, we thought this place might suit your Dungeons and Dragons, so I've got parents that are taking me to places or suggesting.
Love that.
I love it as well.
That's
it's
great.
Really nice. They don't include what I do really in it, but they know that it's a passion of mine.
That's nice. That's really nice.
And I think the creative process of running a game will not even see the stuff that goes in behind the scenes, and I try not to be over prepped. Because I think sometimes when I'm over prepped, I don't think my games run as well.
Why do you think that is?
Because in my head I want you to go a way that you want to go, and you don't even go anywhere near it.
That is the curse of the D&D game, is that you can guarantee that your players will do the thing that you haven't thought of.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think over prepping can be too much because you can get set. It can be stuck in your mind, and then you kind of think, "Oh, I need to put them back." I don't think I do put you necessarily back on track. I give you choices to try and get you there.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So obviously we talked a little bit about the school side of things. I find this really interesting because, one, I'm really interested that there are people coming through who still have an interest in this, because I know I did when I was at school as well. And I've got a daughter, and she's 23 now. I know I don't look old enough. But she's really into her D&D. It's like, she's properly following me down the rabbit hole with it. But I'm really interested that there is still this young group which have got a thirst for it.
It's more than a thirst. I mean, it's passion.
Where do you think that comes from? Because I'm kind of curious as to how does that start for them. Do you think? You might not know, but
I don't actually know, because that first 3 lads in the library that came to me and asked to play, and I think at that point we had done some Warhammer. Now, one of the other players in our games was a student years and years and years ago, and I think we played Warhammer and Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
And I think that lot came in from there, and I have no idea how the 3 boys that came and asked me, and they would have been in S4, 4th year at the time. I don't know what that is in English terms, but if year 7, I think, is primary. I think year 7 is S1, 8, 9. Year 10 maybe.
Okay.
Just for anybody, I don't know what other stages in other countries are. But what we call S4, secondary 4. So they're about 15 going on 16.
Yeah.
When they came to me, they must have been playing it at home. And then decided, well, let's use the library space. And I mean, back then I would have been in my mid-30s. And I was only just getting into it. We started playing D&D, and then I discovered video gaming after that, which was that's another story. Oblivion, whew. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that's how it happened. The current ones are doing it because they've seen it doing it, and when they do what we call transition days from primary into secondary, so before they come up to secondary school, I always mention that I do Dungeons and Dragons, and one of my key things for getting connected with youngsters is I'm a video gamer. I might not play that huge wider range of them, but as soon as they hear that you're a video gamer, they're kind of not necessarily in awe, they just still can't quite believe an adult, especially one of my age, plays video games.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And I think it's an in. The current batch have come through, they'd heard about it, and I suspect there's brothers and sisters or friends of brothers and sisters, and they've probably played it. And I don't want to say that the 5th edition and the critical roles, the high rollers and all that have probably brought a lot in as well.
Yeah.
But I could argue that that's going to make me think, I've got the active role. Do I ask them? Have they heard a critical role? I'm not sure if some of them will have.
No. Well,
to be brutally honest, not anymore anyway.
There's definitely, I mean, from my own personal experience, my daughter came to it from things like Dimension 20 and the Adventure Zone and things like that, because she just kind of picked up an episode and was just like, this is amazing, I want to find out more about it. But I do wonder how much of that kind of bleeds through to the younger generation, and they kind of see it very differently to how we saw it kind of growing up.
I think they must do. I had never heard of it as a game.
Yeah.
I did watch the cartoon in the 1980s.
Phenomenal cartoon.
Yeah. Giving our age away.
I know, right? It's terrible.
But yeah, never heard of it. Watched the cartoon. Never even, as far as I know, featured at the school, but I was shy and retiring and I wouldn't have said boo to a goose. So I probably would never have got involved. But I've always loved fantasy. I wonder if some of these... So I know some of the kids are coming in from a reading background and reading fantasy and things.
Okay.
But then on the other hand, you get other kids that are coming in from a non-reading background and start reading. So as well.
What are the kind of key differences? I mean, between prepping for a group of adults and then having to prep for a group of children.
I've got to be honest, I think maybe I've got blasé, and I've got a couple of good one-shot wonders that I bought recent, and they're fantastic. And I started using one of them in a game, and just much shorter. The problem is I think I probably over prep for them when I do prep, but now I kind of run stuff that I know. So Lost Mine of Fandelver.
Yeah.
Dragon of Icespire Peak, things that I've got a bit a background in, even though in school, to be brutally honest, when you have 50-minute sessions, you never really complete a campaign, to be honest, by the time the kids have left school. But they have fun. I think the main thing is just, again, going back to the bullet points, but have 3 bullet points. That's it.
Yeah.
And see where that takes you. I'm much more open to the roleplay with the older students because they've got more experience. So in Curse of Strahd, for instance, somebody asked me on Tuesday after school there, are we going to finish this before I leave school? I went,
unlikely.
50 minutes, once a week during term time only. And I said, look, if you don't mind, I will push you on just to encounters. And then they all picked up, oh, but we really like the roleplay. Especially when they've got a polymorphed character who one of the people who left school last session and is now polymorphed into Anton the sheep with a dread helm. Oh, prepping for children. What's the point when they come up with some weird, wonderful ideas?
Yes.
it's kind of, yeah.
Different perspective. Different way of thinking about things, definitely.
It really is. Sometimes you kind of try not to roll your eyes at some of the things, and the brain has to work. I actually almost think it has to work much faster than working with adults or running games with adults, because you don't want to let them down.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, I think the main thing is certainly one of the big things for me in the prep is actually having things like the materials ready for all the other groups. So at the moment we've got to work out with the spaces of the library. I think at the moment we've got 4 groups on a Friday, ranging from about 3 players and a DM up to 6 or 7 players and a DM.
That's good.
Somebody was quite okay about running that because I was going to split them further, but they were a friendship group. And they've now played outside of school as well.
Amazing.
But it's having things like DM trays with your dice in there, with a range of miniatures, with the guides that I've written for them that they never read, but they're there just in case. Creating the character guide, because to be brutally honest, the handbook was so back and forth when you're creating a character that I created the own player guide. Pre-made characters for them. A white clean grid. I think that's the more prep I do generally in the holidays to make sure everything's checked and that they've got their dry white markers, they've got their pens and pencils and pencils. They all now know not to write pen on their character.
Yeah, no point whatsoever. Do you are you sometimes surprised by how they react to certain situations?
Not anymore. I suppose I might have been in the first stages of it when I was still very green around this. Very green, blagging it. Yes, I am. So when I can't remember even though it was only June, when the lad that was playing Anton, big brute of a fighter, in Curse of Strahd, I had a hag polymorph him, and the kid said, sheep, and we polymorphed into a sheep, and it's kind of, oh, okay. So now they've got this sheep with a dread helmet, which I'm not. And what's happened now is that sheep, because the games are so short, I tend to forget about the tag-alongs that they tend to collect.
Yeah.
But they mentioned something. What was it? Does the sheep still have all Anton's gear and the healing potions he had? And I went, oh, okay. And somebody made some sort of comment about be quite good at it. basically sicked it up, vomited it up. And I went, okay.
Yeah.
So we now have Anton the sheep, still with all his gear, but potentially on what a percentile roll, maybe, I don't know. I went, could provide them with a healing potion by puking it up. That's children, that's young people for you.
Absolutely.
I was listening to the group today at lunchtime, and I sometimes, to be honest, I've got someone taking over the game I started in end of August there. I've got a lassie in 6th year that's wanting to run a game, so she's going to take over running the game I started with Fandelver and below. And I'll just mentor her.
Yeah.
Train of thought's gone. Yeah, today at lunchtime, the lad that was running a game, they meet every Thursday, and they will actually play on a Tuesday as well. I've let them do Tuesday, even though that's not official D&D day. Miniature painting on the Monday, which we seem to have something like 6 or 7 people turn up for that now. But he was actually at the stage of not letting someone to do. So I'm trying to, because he's a learner DM. Yeah. And I actually thought, you kind of need, I just said from my desk, I said, you need to actually think about and let them do that if they want to. Yeah, give a roll, could be a high DC if you need to kind of railroad. I do say to the kids, actually, going back to the prep, to a certain extent, because of the time limitations, I do have to railroad a little bit more.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, hate doing it, but sometimes you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, apart from obviously them having fun and those kind of things, what kind of skills do you think they gain from it?
Right, in Scotland, we've got Curriculum for Excellence, which covers start primary all the way through to S6, 6th year, or 6th form. And Curriculum for Excellence, basically I can pull loads of learning outcomes from that. One of the biggest takeaways, I don't have the stuff to hand, I don't think, is, and I can get emotional. I mean, even just walking around the library, watching them play, I can get emotional. I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm an emotional person. Do you know what? I think the biggest, yes, they're learning without realising they're learning. Because we can fit in numeracy, not surprisingly.
Yep, absolutely.
I even have a sheet that has the dice on it and all the geometry terms for them and everything. Platonic solids or something like that, if I remember correctly. And so, yeah, numeracy, obviously literacy are key outcomes in that, certainly for the outcomes for what they call responsibility for all in the school. Numeracy, literacy, and health and well-being.
Yeah.
Now, in the last few years, especially post-pandemic, hate to bring it up, but yeah, that's had a huge effect on it. I think health and well-being in school libraries as a general, that safe space to be who they want to be. And if that's a fantasy elf or dwarf hitting things in Tend, who am I to complain about that? They are communicating. I have seen students who come and picked Dungeons and Dragons, hardly spoke a word, really quiet, it's kind of, sorry, can't hear you, to now coming on a weekly basis and plays an activity and at lunchtime and is talking and getting really engaged. Over the years, I've had quite a lot of neurodivergent players who have learnt to communicate, learnt to take a turn, learnt not to fly off the handle when something doesn't go their way. It's great because if something doesn't go their way, it's actually a really tempering place to be. Yeah. Because we are in a game with rules to a certain extent. Well, there are rules. But somehow, especially those on the autistic spectrum, who can fly off the handle or can take things to heart, seeing them being able to deal with an imaginary situation will help them in their real world at the end of the day. And I think the health and well-being side is probably one of the biggest things. And I'm actually, thankfully, in terms of the library as a whole, especially at lunchtimes, before registration rather than academics, it's very much recognised that that's the sort of space it is that safe space where people can be who they want to be, whether that's in D&D, whether that's playing Magic the Gathering, miniature painting, playing games on a computer. I know a lot of school libraries don't allow that. My lot all know that if somebody needs it for work, that work gets priority.
Yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely.
Board games, colouring in, you name it. All that is all part and parcel, and D&D is very much of that. Basically, one of the big reasons I was able to finally be myself was because of the safe space you provided me and my friends with. Heck, half of the reasons I've gained a decent-sized social circle was because of D&D.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, it's... I mean, and these are all people that have played D&D for 6 years at school. It's quite sobering, to be honest, the amount of people. I once had a communication from a pupil quite a long time ago who said if it wasn't for Dungeons and Dragons and the library, they might not still be here. And that's... I can get emotional, I can feel myself going. If that's all you can do is let someone be who they need to be, whether it's through gaming or Dungeons and Dragons or whatever else they want to play. We've done Cthulhu there, we've done Pathfinder, or at least other people have run Pathfinder and Starfinder and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Oh, she says, what else have I got on there? Yeah. Isn't that worth any amount of education and time in school?
Definitely.
I might get shot for that, but...
No, I 100% agree. I think it's the things that you can't teach in a classroom, I would say.
And I wish I had the time and the knowledge to be able to use it to teach. Because I actually think this would do the world a good.
100%.
And we have kids that won't talk in a classroom because listening and talking is one of the big key curriculum for excellence outcomes.
Yeah.
And communicating and explaining things, and obviously creative stuff. So creating text could be describing what your character is doing as they're searching for the hidden doorway or whatever. But these folks maybe never show that in a classroom, but all of a sudden come alive in a role-playing game. And it would be quite good if we could use that for actually assessment and things.
Well, I think it should be. I think anything where, from my perspective, being able to display that is the key factor, not necessarily where they've displayed it.
Yeah.
But it's the ability, isn't it?
So I've got more quotes here. I mean, the health and well-being outcomes, things like developing friendships.
Yeah.
I mean, would I have had more than... It sounds really sad, but I was always a handful of friends person at school. But would have I developed more friends through something like that? Probably not, because I hated drama at school and I probably would never even cope with that when I was 12 to 18. But
having the opportunity...
Learning to deal with frustrations, overcoming failure,
yeah,
dealing with the fact your dice suck.
I do that. That's a regular thing for me. Oh look, I failed my dexterity check again.
This person probably won't mind because over 6 years, I wish, in a way, you kind of wish you'd been keeping stats of their rolls because it's quite scary how bad his dice rolls were. Even when I gave them new dice at Christmas, because I quite often, because I'm a bit of a dice goblin, hoarder, maybe a dice dragon actually, I tend to clear out my dice once a year, and I give my activities pupils a set at Christmas time, so they collect. So unfortunately, I've given quite a lot of students over the years problems with dice collecting, but hey ho. But yeah, overcoming that sort of failure. But yeah, this poor person, it's regular ones.
Yes, happens to the best of us.
Oh boy, it was a running joke, and thankfully they were very okay about that. Things like learning to not give up if it gets challenging. We're all a bit prone to that, aren't we?
Oh yeah, definitely.
a little bit. Says the person who, I don't know if you noticed, but who is a bit overwhelmed because this is the first time with the 2 games that I have played above level 10.
Yes.
Or let alone run a game. I've never played in a game that high level.
Yeah, I know, right? We're definitely
And there's
progressing.
nothing, I mean, other than stuff that I would have to search for, third-party stuff, there is nothing official really out there for higher level play.
Not really.
It's hard. It is actually really hard. Social well-being, so that's mental and emotional well-being. Group work.
Yep.
Many of us would prefer to have sat in a corner hiding and not doing group work. Taking turns, not seeking out a turn. I mean, the mental health and well-being side of things is great. The other thing that came out, I was lucky to be able to run Dungeons and Dragons through lockdown. I was very lucky to be allowed to run it through Roll20, so I could sit in this space and still have our Tuesday school, and that's something else that actually came out of it. These youngsters, 6 or so, that played regularly on a Tuesday, we did it for a year, because obviously it was about a year before we were allowed to do in-person play in the school again. And again, some of them were saying that they would never have coped without it.
Yeah.
And to have been able to, and yeah, I use Roll20, I really love it. The kids love doing it as well, and very much said, again, they're not quite sure where they would have been if they didn't have that escape.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, especially in the light of a lot more LGBTQ awareness nowadays, doesn't role-playing game give people, whether it's our youngsters or older people, and I didn't clock this until the last 5 years when it was starting to become much more of a thing, much more talked about, even in schools. I hadn't clocked that I had youngsters experimenting, trial with gender within the role-playing games, and then
a safe space,
coming out and being relatively comfortable in themselves in many cases. It's kind of, and that was a bit of an eye-opener to me. I mean, in my slightly insular world.
No, but you're quite right, because
yeah,
it's again, what you're talking about is making something that creates a safe space where people can
be what they want to be.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
And I guess that kind of brings me on to, because we're almost at our time already, Francis. I can't believe it. When it comes to safeguarding and setting up the kind of, that side of things, I'm guessing it has to be a lot more controlled than, say, when you're playing with friends.
And yes, I was going to say yes and no. We never had anything. I've just spotted a spelling error in my consent and safeguarding. Never mind. We never did anything like that. The only proviso way back when we started, and even up until the last 5 to 10 years, was keep it clean for school.
Yeah.
But with sense. And I know, especially playing with you folks, the emotional bleed especially is horrendous sometimes. Especially, I mean, I am going to come out with it. I mean, as a menopausal woman, the emotions can be up here or down there, and they have I mean, I've always been an emotional person anyway, but the emotions that something like a game can bring out when you've got invested in your character, or a DM invested in their players' characters and their own NPCs and things and all that. I think emotional bleed, I do talk to the kids now about it. So like when we started back after August there, I talk about the games, that they have to be thought about in terms of emotional well-being and all that. And because we have players ranging from age 11, 12 up to age 18. Lots of different abilities and learning styles and behaviours and gender identities and things. And we've got a really welcoming group. I mean, I am so proud of the youngsters that are in my groups, because they are very welcoming, or they certainly come across as it. But I talk about things, mention about things like racism that is just absolutely not so tolerated. So what I say to them when they're running games, and do you know what, the first thing when those boys started running a game for us and I played, we were in an inn having beer, and of course back then I didn't really think anything of it, and then nowadays you think, hey. So things like drinking or drugs, don't focus on them. Constitution saves, make consequences severe so they're in a school. So make it more difficult. So that sort of thing I will make more difficult, and I hopefully youngsters do. Phobias, I had a student that was so terrified of spiders, they asked me, do not put spiders in a game. And it's kind of hard because we've had this conversation before. I use my phobias as a thing to intensify the game, you know what I mean? If somebody, so I think a game played with one of our other players had a dark creeping in, and I do kind of have a fear of dark, not necessarily in Orkney because we don't have as many trees that makes it even more shadowier, but I actually quite like that fear, but not everybody does. We do not allow things like if there is, I mean, we all know in fantasy worlds there probably is slavery and oppression and things like that, but that has to be not the key part of a story. It might be there in the background, or you're trying to stop it or something like that. I do mention triggers as well, so bereavement, suicide, obviously mental health and things like that. I think youngsters are a bit, immune's the wrong word to it. I don't think they regard it as important, but I regard it as important just to tell them at the end of the day. And I do talk about emotional bleed, that we can get emotional and upset about things that happen in game, or things outside in our other world will come in. I know I can remember being in a game and I think it was a bit of background story for my character, and I got a bit emotional because it was a bit kind of a father thing. I lost my father a few years ago. I certainly tell them not to be graphic in their descriptions. No less explicit language, no homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, or anything like that. Nothing like alcohol or drug abuse. And I basically say content should not be dissimilar to something like Peggy 12, parental guidance, and the ESRB teen. Because we just need to be canny.
Absolutely.
In a school.
Definitely.
I say to them, always come and speak to me if something bothered you.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
But I think that's really the lessons that teaches as well about people being open and honest about talking about these kind of things. I think that's a big thing too, because I think we've come from an age where those kind of things haven't been discussed and not talked about, and
gosh, you and I, we will have. We don't talk about it, and maybe I'm over talking about it these days. I don't know.
But it is true, isn't it? Because the kind of get up, carry on, and regardless, and rather than discuss.
How many times we told that at school, and possibly even by parents and things.
100%.
Or other adults.
So this is why I kind of love this, is that what we're actually seeing is this move towards discussion and creating environments where people feel safe to have these discussions. And if D&D helps facilitate that, then what a great thing.
Or any other RPG.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yes. Other RPGs are available, folks. They are different ones out there.
I always think we need to try more, but I do not have the headspace to learn. And I've got Faith in there. I've got Dragonbane.
Yes.
I'm waiting for the Magnus Archive stuff to come.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Again, I would have to run from a pre-prep adventure.
I know, but...
but maybe there's a nice little one shot we can try in the future.
Anyway, no, I'll be up for that.
But definitely be up for that. I think certainly for me, the growth that I've had, especially post-pandemic in the last few years, and all the consent and safeguarding stuff has come up, and the LGBT stuff. Now we run the inclusion group in the library as well, and So that has opened my eyes to a lot. I've had students absolutely explain all these things to me, which I had very little understanding of 4 years ago. And it's made me realise how important D&D and the school library is for being totally accepting of anybody and everybody, no matter who they are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether it is through their games or whether it's through playing board games or sitting reading or falling asleep on a beanbag, I don't care. If they fall asleep on a beanbag at lunchtime, it's their lunchtime.
Probably need it, yeah.
We're in a different world now, and I think it's trying to move with the times as well.
Definitely.
And using role-playing games too.
Well, yes, absolutely. I think that is the way it should be. Francis, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I love talking to you. But I've got one final question. It's a question I ask everybody. How do you deal with social media when it comes to, the classic response.
I love it and hate it.
Yep.
I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met our players because of it.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
I wouldn't have met some really good friends in you, I hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had a friend once, sadly passed, kind of called them a surrogate parent. And just somebody that I kind of grew up knowing through the ponies and everything. And I latterly said something about social media and Facebook. Oh, they're not real friends. I'm sitting there thinking,
yeah, they are.
Actually, yes, they are.
They really are.
If you land with social media is a dangerous place, but if you land with the right people, they're friends and probably friends for life. You know what I mean?
Oh yes. Yeah.
I'm trying to weed myself away from it because it's easy to doom scroll.
Yeah.
And even today I was thinking about Twitter. I'm not using it. I'm still posting on it, but I'm not scrolling it.
Yes.
I never find the people I really like to follow.
It's unfortunately, I think part of it is we're moving into the cycle where we've just had the English elections, and we're moving into the American elections, and I do think
we voted as well.
Yes, no, of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, yeah, I heard the. No, I won't get political. No, I won't. Well, but
games.
Yes, but I do think that because we're moving into those kind of areas, we're seeing more of the doom scrolling stuff. It's just becoming more available, so it does feel like a trudge sometimes.
Yeah, it's addictive. I mean, I am so sad that I can't find the people whose posts used to pop up with really interesting stuff about role-playing games, or I think my Twitter was used for role-playing games and school librarians, actually. And I miss that interaction. But I do think tech full stop, says those of us that sit in front of it a lot, has addled us a little bit, to say the least. I do find my attention span is not as good. It's any wonder kids' attention span's not as good. That's another thing. D&D, role-playing games, attention spans keeps a lot of them. Even the ones that have difficulties with that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But no, social media, love it and hate it.
I think you're right.
I have been lucky to find some, especially on Discord, found some couple of really lovely, safe communities as well.
Absolutely.
They are there.
Yes.
But
you've got to wade through.
Again, it's being ruthless, isn't it? It's saying, right, block.
Yep.
It is actually being ruthless and hiding stuff when you get a
definitely.
chance.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's helped.
It's always a pleasure. I love talking to you.
Thank you very much for
asking. Thank you so much for chatting, because this series is all about talking to interesting people who've got interesting viewpoints, and I think everything you've talked about today, one, it gives me hope in the people coming through, because they're getting that exposure to something amazing, and secondly, just the fact that we've got these safe spaces. It does make a huge difference. Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, I'm not going to cry. No, I refuse to. It's not going to happen. We're going to finish up there, but just lastly, do you want to just tell people where they can find you, should they want to follow you and see some of the stuff you're working on?
Yeah, Adventures in Rovana is my blog. It is kind of intermittent. Same with a Northern Journal is the other one that I run. It's kind of started as island blogging for the BBC years and years and years ago. It's kind of Orkney and holidays and things. So there's two blogs, Adventures in Rovana and a Northern Journal. Twitter, Highlandlass. Blue Sky, Highlandlass. I think that's probably the best places to find if you're that interested. I'm maybe not posting so much on Twitter. I'm kind of Blue Sky. I'm in and out of.
But yeah, I would recommend you go and follow, because especially if you like horses and beautiful, beautiful Highland backdrops, you'll see some amazing things. Just a pleasure as always, and thank you for being my DM. I don't say that enough, and it is greatly appreciated.
Just getting back to maps later.
Yeah. And that's it from me. So thank you so much for joining us for these shows. It's always greatly appreciated. You can check out me across the social medias under The Gamer's Rest, and on the YouTube channel there's lots of different bits and pieces going on at the moment. And then this week I think we're finishing up the Quiet Year, which will be an interesting end to a interesting campaign. But don't forget to take care of yourselves, and of course those that can't, and do come back and join us again for more Tal Talks with people in the industry. Thanks everyone, we'll see you soon. Bye.